Alright, today we're going to learn how to color correct using Speedgrade. And so let's open up our assets and we'll see that we've got our Premiere project and our assets. So let's open up the Premiere project and you'll see that we have 5 shots. We've got a guy on a unicycle, a little girl with a basketball, a woman standing in front of a wall, some tractors, and a woman in front of an airplane. And what's going to happen is that we are each shot I've cut in half, and so we will leave the first half unchanged and we will color correct the second half. So with our timeline highlighted in blue, we will go File, Export, EDL. We will say OK, and we will put it in our, where's my desktop? We will put it in our Speedgrade assets right there. Now we will go to Applications and we will go to Adobe Speedgrade and we will open Speedgrade and we will new project and we will call it Your Name Speedgrade, and let's go ahead and store it in our main root folder again, so desktop Speedgrade right there. And so what we will do is we will refresh our folder. We'll go to our Speedgrade assets. We'll twirl down and right here this is our EDL, and so we'll double click that and we will load it. And so basically our shots are loaded but the footage is not loaded yet. And so now we'll go to our media, we'll go to our video and we'll double click the video and that will load the shots. And down here we will say load from desktop, and now we will go to color, and now our footage is loaded on the desktop. We will go to looks and we can start color correcting. There's a little right down here. I want to open up this panel just a little higher so we can see. If you cannot see, if this is the only thing that comes up when you open the project, click on this little triangle here so that we can see the monitors. And what we want to see is this is the vector scope monitor. This is the really important one. This is the RGB parade. This is the histogram, which is not terribly important. And this is the waveform monitor, and what we want it to be is Luma. So we just want to see the black and white information. If we need any of the color information, that's all right there, and so it'll just help us keep things straight. What else do we need to know? So it's possible to play your footage here, or you can just grab this playhead and move the footage around through the timeline. They've got this option called 2 up, so you can see the shot before and your current shot, or 3 up where you can see the shot before and the shot after. So if you're matching color, and make your life a little easier. And this is the toggle switch to toggle your color correction on and off if you want that, which is useful to see what your changes look like. You can also toggle on and off down here in the timeline by just clicking the eyeball on and off. Down here, what we can do is by clicking on this, we create a primary layer that we can use for grading. We can also create a secondary layer for grading. We can duplicate that secondary layer if we want to double it up and just make another minor change. And if we want to, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and pick these other layers and hit the trash can to delete them. Okay? Let me open this up a little bit more so we can see. There's 2 ways that we can operate our color correctors. We've got the color wheel mode and we've got the slider mode, and we can lock and unlock the sliders, which is really useful if we want to work with them individually or in combination. in here that we can make overall color corrections. We can correct just the shadows, we can correct just the midtones, we can correct just the highlights. And in all of these rooms, we have control over the original saturation of the image. The pivot point is sort of shifting between the gamma and the gain. Contrast, we can adjust the contrast with just a quick dial. We can change the color temperature to blue or orange by just grabbing that dial. We can change the magenta green by just grabbing that dial and pulling, and then we have control over the final saturation. And you'll see that there are these little boxes that we can click, and what that'll do is that it will zero out any changes that we make when we need to go backwards. And lastly, we have the masks that we can, if we create a separate layer, we can apply a mask to it, either a circular mask or a square mask, or this is the most useful, the vignette, because it allows us to not only change the shape, but it allows us to feather the gradation. And that's what you do most of the time when you're making masks. So let's grab the playhead and go to shot 1, and we will make our first correction on the second half of the shot. We will first want to do what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're all balanced out here. We can tell that we've got a lot of information up here that's all blown out, and we don't have a very strong black level yet. And so that's the first thing we need to do, is we need to not only balance our colors but get our 100% is white, 0 is black. And so let's just start with the color wheel, and I'm just going to take the gamma control and I'm going to pull that down until we've got some stuff touching black. And then let's take the highlight control and we'll see that basically there's no information in the whites. So if we want to darken it a little bit, we need to just pull it down a little bit and just make it glow not so much. So we'll set that right around 90 for right now. The balance of red, green, and blue is pretty good, so we don't need to make any of those changes. So let's go ahead and make another primary layer, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into the shadows and we're going to pull out all of the color saturation in the shadows, and that'll give us a clean black. And then we are going to go into the highlights and we're going to pull all the saturation out of the highlights so that we get a pure white in there. And then oftentimes we need to then go into our mids and boost our saturation, but in this particular shot we don't need to do that. Next thing we'll do is we'll create another primary layer, and we will go into the shadow area and we will pull down create some stronger blacks. Sometimes it takes the machine to think a little bit, so just by clicking it on and off, there we've created a nicer back level here, but maybe we're a little too aggressive on here, so I'm going to raise it up. Alright, and so that looks like it's better. Next thing we need to do is that the red gloves are kind of glowing and in our face. So what we'll do is we'll click the S for a secondary color correction, and what we want to do is click on the little dropper and we will drop the color red on. And then what we want to do is we're going to select white black, and what we want is just to set it up so that just the gloves, just that glove and that glove look pure white, and everything else is black. So let's go ahead and actually let's slide our dropper to more to red, and we'll adjust our hue first so that we're sitting mainly on red, and we will then slide. We need to go look for the darker reds, and then we want to play with the saturation. Alright. And if we toggle on back to normal, now we're in the zone on those red gloves. And now we just want to open it up until we get, oops, so we don't necessarily want that little guy, so I'm going to come back a little bit. Alright, and so now basically everything that black is masked out, and so only the things that are white here will take the color correction. So we'll go back to none now, and then we can go to our color wheel, and we can just pull down the saturation on those gloves. Alright, that's pretty good. Now they look like red gloves, but they're not all blowing out and in our face. Now the last thing that we want to do is we'll click P again, and we're going to create a vignette. So click on mask over here, and what we're going to do is just drag our vignette out so that we kind of make it darker on the edges to give the perception of more contrast, to darken this wall a little bit. In fact, we probably want this wall to be darker, so we'll kind of cheat the mask to there. And so then with that vignette selected, we want to pick the button that says apply grading to the outside of the mask. And then we can just pull down our gamma and we'll clip this on and off to make it think a little better. And it gives that impression of a much better shot. And the trick of a mask is that you don't want to be able to see it. And so when you clip on and off, if you can't really tell what it is, then you're fine. If you want to make adjustments, click on the widget. Oftentimes what we would do is just make the inner circle even tighter to help the feather a little more. Alright, and that's shot number 1. Now let's go to shot number 2, and we'll go to the second half of the shot, find a spot where the girl is has the ball and is not in motion. And if we look at the RGB parade, we'll see that they're totally out of sync. And so we want to get these colors to match up to get our color balance back. So we'll just balance that with our first layer. If you're in color wheels, let's just go to the sliders, and we will unlock the sliders, and we will drag down green, gamma, until the pedestal matches at the bottom, and then we'll pull down the blue gamma until the pedestal matches. And I went a little too far, I think, so I'm going to come back on the blue a little bit. And because it takes the system a long time to think, by blinking it on and off, it also forces it to think. So now our pedestals match. And now we want to get our green and blue highlights to match. And so we will unlock the gain, and we'll take our green. Oops, got locked. Just the green, and we'll slide the green down a little bit. A little too far. Let's see if 12 is more appropriate. Let's try 10. Alright, so 10 looks good. And now we'll pull down blue. See where we are there. Alright. And I'm going to come back on blue just a little bit. Let's go to 15 and see what that looks like. And so I'm not really looking at the picture, but our RGB parade looks pretty good. And our picture looks pretty good. If only she was in focus. Let's find a frame where she's in focus. There we go. Take out the motion blur. Let's make a new primary correction layer. And let's go into the highlights and take out all the saturation in the highlights. Now let's create another primary layer. And let's go back to the color wheels. And let's pull down the shadow gamma a little bit. Okay, I like that a little better. Now, so the girl looks pretty good. We've got good saturation. The ball just seems a little bright. So let's pick our secondary color correction, and we'll pick our ball. And we will set our selection. And now we just need to get it so just the ball itself is white. We're already sort of in the orange zone here. So let's start with lightness first. The ball is kind of darker. So we'll go in here to mess with that. And we know that the ball is saturated. And so let's get it over here into the saturation zone. Let's see what that does. Okay, got too much of a mask. We'll bring this guy lightness to the left. Let's extend our saturation. Alright, got a little bit of the ball now. Let's take it, let's grab it in the darks even more. Click it on and off to make it think. Okay, that's pretty good. Now let's see if there's a way we can get that to brighten up. Click it on and off. Nope, that just made it darker. So let's slide it down here and see if we get better results. Messing with the saturation. Alright. So that's good, but we've picked up a little bit of her flesh tone. So we'll just slide it to the right again. Alright, and now we're focused on the basketball. So we can come back to just none. And then we can take our final saturation and bring it down a little bit. Alright, now the ball is not glowing as much. And now the last thing that we want to do, let's make another primary layer. Let's build a mask and kind of bring down the ground just a little bit. So we'll take our mask and we will position it down here. Let's zoom to 50% so that we can get our mask to where we want it. Because basically what we want to do is just create a straight line that's approximately where that line is. And we want to do the same thing And it doesn't need to be a perfectly flat line. In fact, a little edge might be good. Okay, so that mask looks good for starters. And now we will just, with that selected, we will pull down our gamma a little bit. See what we get. Oh, sorry, we need to tell it to be inside the mask. So now we've got our grading inside the mask. And I want to edit the mask just a little more, so I'll click on the widget tool and we'll just drag this guy up into the blacks a little bit better. And now we'll see what that does. It's off. It's on. Alright, so that looks good. Okay, so now let's go to shot 3. And the shot was shot in a way that's very common practice now for cinematographers. It's shot in a very low contrast mode, where basically we can see that all the shadows are been pulled up and all the whites have been pulled down. And so from 10 to 90, that's where they've been collecting all of the information, because it's really easy to make things darker and make that information go away, or make things brighter and make it go away. And so this is really good for color correctors to deal with, and it's becoming a more common practice right now. So this is something that we will be becoming more and more used to. So the first thing we want to do is just correct our RGB parade. So we'll just pull down our blacks till the reds and blues approach 0, and we'll raise the gain a little bit, but we can't go too far because the hot spot is right here on our skin, and we're not used to that hot spot being on the flesh, so we'll just kind of keep it right there. Next thing we'll do is pull all the saturation out of the shadows. See what that looks like on and off. And we'll go into the midtones, and we will pull down the gamma for the mids a little bit. Now we're basically balanced, but before we go any farther, I want to go down here, and I want you to click on style. And what we want to do is we want to take the style called 60s 1, and so we got to find it, and so I'm sliding down here, there's 60s 1. Now if we double click, what that's going to do is it's going to wipe out all of this information that we've done over here, and we don't want that. So let's just take 60s 1 and we will just drag it on top, and then we can take the opacity slider here and just pick how much of it we want. Alright, so then let's take a look at all we've done. So we've got our uncorrected image. We got our color balance back and brought in our contrast. We desaturated our blacks. Then we added a look that we've then adjusted the opacity of. And that's a good looking shot. Looks like it was made in the 60s, huh? Let's go to our next shot, which is of the tractor. We'll go to the second half of the shot, spot where there's like no motion distortion. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a look that kind of looks Dust Bowl era. But the first thing we need to do is to make our basic RGB corrections. So we'll click on the color wheel, and we will just pull down our gamma until it touches 0. And we will push our gain up until the blue hits 100. Then we need to click into the highlights, and we'll go back into the sliders. And we will raise the blue gain. I'm sorry, not the blue gain. Let's raise the green gain up until it matches the blue gain. And that's pretty good. And we'll do the same with the red gain. Alright. Now our shot doesn't look all that good, but it's balanced on the color monitor. So let's create another primary color correction. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into color temperature here, and we're going to warm things up a little bit. So we're going to slide it to the orange to about 0.10. And we're going to make it a little more green because everything looks really pink. And we're going to drag that back to about 0.12. Alright, things are looking a little bit normal there. Actually, we won't pull down the saturation yet because now we're going for the next gag. So ultimately we're going to make it sepia tone, but I want to see some of the green in here. And so what we will do is we will create a secondary color correction layer. And we will select some colors across the nose of this tractor. And what we want is it to kind of go between blue and green. So we'll set our color slider there, go to white and black, and actually we've got a pretty good pull right there with these settings down here. Let's go ahead and blur it out a little bit, see if that makes it look nicer. Alright, so that's a pretty good mask right there. So we'll come back to our normal look. And now we are going to go to our styles, and we're going to pick the one called Back in the Day, and we're going to click and hold and drag, and we're going to drag it to the top. And you'll see now we've kind of created this sepia look. And let's just click on the sepia layer, and we're going to lower its opacity. And we're going to lower the opacity to about 87. And we'll click it on and off. And now we've kind of got that brownish look, but we want to put that green back on. So let's click our secondary color correction, and we're going to put it up inside this folder. And now what we're going to do is we're going to boost our green. Let's boost the gain first. Unlock that. I just want it to be the gain. Reset you guys. Reset you. Let's boost the gain up so we can see green. That's made the green a little more prominent, and we will do the same thing with the green gamma. And then what we need to do is just raise the saturation up a little bit. And now we've got some nice green popping through in our shot, and we can move on from there. And we'll go to the back half of our final shot. And what we're going to do, this is a shot low contrast, like the other shot of the woman. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this look day for night. So let's first start by just setting up our contrast. Zero out our gamma. Bring our gain up to 100. Went a little too far. That's good. That's a good basic start. Let's go ahead and pull the saturation out of our blacks. And that makes them look blacker. Alright, and now what we'll do is we will kind of come back in and we will boost our mid-tone saturation a little bit. See what that looks like. Alright. So now we've got a good basic look cooking. And now let's make it look day for night. We'll start by with a new tool, and we will just make a normal vignette. Around our world. keep things inside the plane as possible. We want to affect it outside the mask, and we will start to pull things down. Let's take a look at our mask tool. We've got a good horizontal line out of our plane, so let's use that to kind of hide our mask a little bit better. Because it makes sense that the plane would be brighter. And we'll make it even darker. Alright, that's good for the bottom at least. Now we'll hit primary again, and we'll do our day for night correction. And so we'll want to go to the sliders, and so what we'll do is we will just kind of pull out the red, pull down the red gamma to about 31. We'll pull down the green gamma to about the same, leaving us with more blue in the darker tones. Then we'll go to the red gain and do the same thing. Oops, let's reset that and unlock it. So the red gain, we'll bring that down to about 39. And we'll take the green gain and do about the same. Let's pull down our saturation. Okay. Now what we've got to do is we need to make our sky dark. So let's click another mask. We'll create another vignette. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can work with it. Bring it up here. We'll kind of make it use the shape of the plane to kind of help mask it. Oh, I can tell we're going to need to make this smaller for our feather to work. Okay. Go to fit. And this time we want to be inside the mask. And we'll go back to our color wheel and we will just pull down our gamma. Pull down the gain as well. Here, we want to see just a little bit of the pipes through there. Let's feather our mask larger. See what that looks like. That looks pretty good. Let's go back to our first mask now, and I want to make it even smaller to really darken up the sides of this plane. Alright. And that looks pretty good. We can print that. When it's time to render, the first thing we want to do is save your project so that if we have to come back to it, it's available to you. That's cool. Then we want to double check to make sure our render bar is set so that it starts at 0 and goes right to the end of our project. Otherwise it will render less than our project will permit. Then we will click on the render bar and we will navigate from the desktop to your Speedgrades folder. You will name your file. You will make sure that it says Apple ProRes 444 2997, and we want the same size as proxy. So that means if we have been working in 1080p the whole time and we want it to come out as 1080p, we'll get that result. And then we will click render and then watch the project before you post it, and you're done.